Cenk 100 would be great in Congress. He knows how to grab attention. His bombast would be undeniably helpful on the steps of the Capitol and in the halls of Congress. Of course, that's assuming he wouldn't pull a Fetterman. I don't think it'd be really weird to see him pull a Fetterman. I do think you'd probably, if he sustained a career in Congress, it's likely there'd be compromised votes and shit, the kind of stuff AOC does that pisses off people. That seems inevitable in almost any circumstance. But no, I would be really surprised to see the guy do a full-on Fetterman. The way that guy's gone from pretending to be this big progressive to, just whatever the fuck he's become since the genocide's been going on, and since all, it's. I haven't tracked it all super closely, so I don't want to just start throwing out details. But I've just seen people calling him out for being the way. It's like complete. He denied that he was a progressive, or he said he's no. It's just like, you're such a scoundrel. What a scoundrel! And I guess he's a fancy lad who went to Harvard, so I didn't actually know that, cosplaying in his hoodie. But I wrote, yeah, like I was saying, despite all my issues, I largely agree. I don't know how much actual legislation would result if he were in Congress, but it's likely he'd be a thorn in the leadership side, which is good. Like, he should stop with this presidency nonsense and do a proper run for Congress or CA Senate. I think there are substantial roadblocks to that working. To be fair, his misogyny content being the main thing, so it seems very low probability, and that's part of the stupidity of choosing to label himself a union buster, makes future political campaigns a tougher sell, to say the least. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, I mean, that's what's kind of interesting about this whole scenario is, like, even right now, even today, I could probably vote for Cenk for office in terms of being a politician, because I don't assign my morality or my ethical core to the people I vote for. They've gotten us to feel that way. A lot of people sort of assess their vote to be an endorsement of that person and everything that they stand for. And in an idealized society, that would you'd probably want something like that. But I think that's sort of nationalistic almost. Not to say that I'm trying to accuse those people, but it sort of speaks to that. They've got you individuating, like the individualism of your vote is so much of a degree that it's only about your own moral stance and your own moral character, as opposed to maybe another way of thinking of it is as a responsibility to those who don't have your privilege. And it's so gross. I talked about this on a recent podcast, I think 187. It's like going back to the fight right now within the leftist sphere of voting for Biden and the not voting for, and for people that I've seen who are of less smart or far less privileged groups than I am as a straight white guy, who have made cases for why voting is disgusting as it is for Biden is to keep Trump out. And I've voted for Democrats, basically mine. I mean, if it's down ballot, I always vote for this as far left candidate as I possibly can. But I vote against Republicans, and but this, like, Joe Biden is a real tough sell. The guy's a murderer. Like I said in the podcast, just to summarize, like, I don't want, like, that we have such a steeper climb organizing labor and some of these administrative departments and administrative executive functions within the government that under Republicans is such a steeper climb, especially with what's being promised under Trump and the fascists that he's in, the dictatorship that he's looking to impose, the militarized police. But look what the Democrats are doing in New York. Those are Democratic politicians. Eric Adams, of course, he's a cop, and Kathy Hochul. They've got the military searching through people's bags just to get onto a train. I mean, this is a police state. This whole society is a rotten fucking slave empire that evolved into a work cult. We still do slavery here. We call them criminals. We call them prisoners. We just stopped calling them slaves. And we didn't ban slavery in this country. We nationalized it. Like, this is a horrible society. And Joe Biden is among the worst people our society could produce. And now he's a child murderer. So I'd like to see him arrested at the inauguration. But it's undeniably true that the fucking Republicans are worse. It's just, but, like, how are we supposed to talk anybody into it? Not that I'm even trying to do that, by the way. If you feel that your vote for a politician reflects your character, and that means I think that's totally fair. Go ahead. I'm not here to invalidate or validate that. That's fine. I don't apply that though. But Joe Biden, I think the Democrats are completely irresponsible, to say the least. They're derelict. They're complicit. They're genociders. I mean, you have to realize how violent, how much the system that the liberals are committed to defending, you know, uh, is built around violence, is built around domination, subjugation, relationships. They're not looking to upend any of this stuff to get rid of the whole fucking deal. For me, it's I want sloppy democracy. I want democratic institutions with an aggressive cultural expansion up towards making human life better in a way that sustains the planet. You know, eco-socialism might be a word. I don't know. The words all get annoying, but the liberals are committed to it, and they're just as violent. And I would maybe not say just as, but it's harder. It becomes harder to make that statement when you got Joe Biden, who's one of the history's greatest murderers of children. Joe Biden has just helped slaughter tens of thousands of children. There's a story in the news right now that a kid, and I think more than one person got killed, but this kid got killed by one of the United States' airdrops because the parachutes didn't open properly, and so that they're dropping food on people then killing them. I mean, it's this every bit of this thing is just this immense horror, and so it couldn't think of something more reckless and irresponsible than what the Democrats are doing by allowing this fucking old. I don't even like calling them dinosaurs because I like dinosaurs, and also they were young dinosaurs. They weren't all old people, but this freaking mummy Joe Biden imposing himself on the country even further. We're so tired of these people, especially his generation. I'm not even a big blame the generations guy, but like that cohort of our world was using outdated politics and information in the 80s. You know, they were there. He still hews to an old world that only ever worked for fucking assholes like Joe Biden. So what am I getting at? Anyway, the point is that, like, I don't think if Cenk were running for Congress, he'd probably be pretty far to the left. I think he's comparatively to who his opponent would be. Maybe I would have to consider voting for him. Obviously, you know, I can't. But like, I was kind of excited about his run for Congress, even though I had been organizing a union against him for very good reasons that you're going to learn eventually. Cenk running for Congress it created a big kerfuffle within the internal culture at TYT. Some people felt if he won, it might mean bad things for the company, or maybe because I don't know, just because it would be very disruptive. I guess some people didn't have strong opinions one way or another, but I was kind of like, yeah, I hope he wins. I think it'd be good. I don't know. I mean, in terms of where we are in Congress and the type of humans we allow into these leadership roles, Cenk has personality traits that would make for interesting, I don't want to say entertainment, but I think he would go in there and probably not shake things up, but he'd be a pain in the ass. I would still probably argue that. I mean, obviously, as you're going to learn, I have major issues with this dude in terms of that. But as far as he'd be probably closer, because I don't think he's getting to Congress and be like, no, I'm not for raising taxes on the wealthy, or no, I'm not for expanding the social safety net and the spending that the government does to help people. He'd be within that realm. I think he's trapped in the concept of electoralism. I think there's a critique there, and there's like a lot of interesting discussion to be had around the power of labor and the power of the labor movement. And that's something I've experienced myself, as far as, like, I keep referring back to the Letter Hack podcast, but I mentioned that, like, it's like TYT is kind of like a cul-de-sac of ideology. Like, you kind of get, you know, if you get pulled down that road, you're not going to go further past their sort of calling balls and strikes kind of cul-de-sac of what it means for progressives to resist the establishment while trying to enter the establishment wing. And I do think there's some potential to electoral. I don't know why you'd give that up when that conversation comes up. And like Michael Brooks had a lot to do with sort of opening my eyes a little bit more to like international socialism and the kind of ideas that emerge from that sort of analysis. So and the thing is, like, my dispositions towards socialism and communism and all those other things, and I find those, like, the labels are just so weighted, and there's so much baggage to those labels. And I even just using the labels, you end up kind of aligning yourself within the certain well-worn grooves, like the same route up a mountain that's very crowded and very like there's just so much. I like to try to find different ways up the mountains. That's why I want to make a documentary about work, but built around the concept of entropy. Anyway, my dispositions I would have been very, very open to like a leftist plucking me out of the TYT cul-de-sac of this is what progressives are fighting for. We're fighting to get rid of money in politics. We're fighting to increase the social safety net. We're fighting to make things more fair in the workplace. That's one that Cenk needs a lot of fucking correction on. But I just wasn't exposed to it. I just didn't have that sort of person or that thing. And so, and I know this is a lot of people's experiences in the last several years, and everybody kind of encounters this, taps into this sort of ski lift, like what's the ski pulley, the one that like pulls you up and you got to, not even the ones with the chairs, the ski yanker, you know what I'm talking about. So people tap into that at different points and it pulls them up the hill a little, and then maybe they come off of it, or maybe they crumble down, or they get somehow dragged off into the right, or, these various sort of intersecting wormhole things where people travel along this continuum. But working for Jimmy Dore, working for Cenk Uygur, having to have a job, and my woodworking job especially too. I fucking lost full use of my hands from that job. You had no benefits, no health care, except lots of free wood. By the way, this is a pretty cool candle holder. Check that out. Isn't that fun? I have a bunch. I wanted to build my own Patreon rewards. So my plan was to build woodworking items for Patreon and sell them as fundraising and stuff. So, I mean, actually, I'm still open to that. I have a lot of stuff. I just can't do any woodworking anymore because my fucking wrists are fucked. So what am I getting at? Like I was very open to being like persuaded by Marxist concepts and socialist concepts and a lot of the different intellectual thinkers of the time, and the different sort of, the different actions of the different like labor movement, and sort of understanding all that through the historical lens. And so like, and that's sort of the place I've been in my own political development in the last 4 or 5 years. I want to say it's embarrassing, but I just didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I knew what I knew. I knew that the propaganda of the childhood I had, the education you get from American public schools, is totally mythology about the founding fathers and what slavery means, and and then trying to get my head into and stay open-minded about the colonialists past and indigenous perspectives. And I still have a long way to go on all those roads. But it certainly seems to me that the story that we're doing is that Europe basically took the destroy a planet in 1,000 years challenge. And how do you do that? Well, you invade and destroy every culture you can. You use, I don't want to say superior, but you use your military technology, the technology of your immorality, especially, to take over places, to impose your will, to produce labor and subjugation, and you use that to funnel wealth back to the homelands, and in so doing you consume as much of the planet as you can until you run out of land, and then the world, quote unquote, matures into something more modern like we have, with more modern economic systems. But it's all still about harvesting the entropy of other people, including the notion of our psychological frontier, even, where they're trying to take as much. Every time you're looking at your phone, every time you're thinking, having these thoughts, you're still being harvested by the colonial project of you are there as a resource to be had. The big data is horrifying. So we're in this sort of twisted world, but yet let's not think of it as very modern, since we still have water that causes brain damage, right? So, point is, Cenk as a politician would probably be okay, I guess. The thing is, though, like I say in this comment, that all that stuff that comes up in the video with the misogyny, with the videos from the past, those are devastating. You really can't get past that. It's more than, and you'll see this is a little bit of a spoiler. It's not much really, but You've already probably heard him say it, but like he was just trying to be Howard Stern.
Get a load of this. I mean, they're literally saying this. They're saying because Cenk was trying to partly copy Howard Stern 20 years ago,
yes,
he is disqualified.
Right.
But when Hillary Clinton goes on the actual Howard Stern show,
I mean, in a sense, the guy's got to come up with an easy shorthand to sort of put it in the past. And it's also not totally fair to just completely like try to malign him with all that stuff. It's because that's also just to touch back on what I was saying earlier is like, that's why for me, I'm going to be talking about how embarrassed I am that I wasn't repulsed by all that back then. So I've grown. I'm hoping people take me on good faith when I say that. And all of that old misogyny stuff, though, in a political thing, which I think one of my favorite sequences in the video is the Mike Tyson's Punch Out part. I just love that whole thing. Where Cenk can't have a political career because of that stuff. I just think that stuff is so upfront and so easy to come out as a cudgel. And another reason why the union busting is so stupid, because like perceiving you're supposed to be a good businessman. You're supposed to know the market, and not understanding that your audience would care that you did union busting. And they're especially, this is the bet that I'm making with my silly project right now, that the audience will also care when they learn the conditions that drove us to start the union. My conditions specifically. I think the audience is going to care a lot about that. I hope they will. Some of them won't. Some of them are probably going to, hit me for being a obsessive weirdo. That's a criticism that's expected. So I think he's kind of foreclosed on his political ambitions, and he's only going for the stunt sort of shit anyway, like this presidency thing. But like, I'd be curious still. Run for Congress. Show how brilliant you are. Michael Shure tried. You guys, Michael Shure and Cenk are these political masterminds. Well, how come Michael Shure didn't win? I mean, oftentimes a person with political ambitions knows that their first time out is going to be tough. Sometimes it's just feeling it out. You don't necessarily expect to win going in. You want to, but usually, oftentimes especially if you're not coming from like a very big foundation as a celebrity or something like that, you're going to have to go a few rounds of loss before you pick up enough steam and you make enough connections. You make better decisions the next time. And so I'm pulling for Michael Shure to come back out, because I like to make fun of it too, because it's kind of funny to me for some reason. And I always I know Michael, but I would be surprised if he knows my name in person. I'm sure he would recognize me, but we had multiple conversations. He has a good vibe, friendly enough vibe. I'd like to hear him come out and talk about the union busting that his buddy Cenk has done. I think that's interesting. Or I think that should be necessary for a politician from the Young Turks sphere. Same with Nina Turner. She's been silent on this whole thing. I want to see her be questioned about her. She's worked at TYT, and her show is called Unbossed. I don't think she does that anymore, but she's the only one there that doesn't have a boss. So speak up. She benefits, and same with Michael. They benefit directly from the labor of these people. It's not just some group of workers, some other company where they can make and scream and yell about. You directly get that labor. So there's a causal chain there that should compel her to come out of her silence about the Young Turks union busting. So that's another thing I'm kind of hoping this thing ends up doing, I guess. Maybe not. Whatever. Can only... No point freaking out about it, I guess. But yeah, I don't think Cenk has much hope for running for Congress. I mean, it would be interesting. Do a proper run, though. Do it in the district where you live. Announce it early, like 2 or 3 years early. You don't have to work too hard until the final year, but start laying the groundwork, build up the machinery, set it all up. And, so far we've only seen 2 stunt campaigns for. So, I don't know. Maybe you'll get my vote. Maybe.